just very impressed with the quality of the writing. Like, I'm underlining so many different things. Easy, 5 stars. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're going to be doing a very exciting reading vlog because today we're going to be reading some of the most popular books of 2025, books that were nominated at the Goodreads Choice Awards this year. And this year, looking at the Goodreads Choice Awards, this is like the first time ever that I've read so little of the thriller category that it's like ridiculous. I think I've only read 6 out of the 20 that were nominated. And so I decided in this video, I'm going to be reading 3 books from the thriller category that I haven't read yet. I'm also going to be reading 1 horror book that was nominated that I've been really excited to get to, as well as 1 book that's historical fiction. So jumping into the TBR, the historical fiction book that I decided to read is actually this one called What Kind of Paradise by Janelle Brown. But the reason why I decided to pick this one out of everything is because Janelle Brown in the past, she actually has published thrillers in the past, and she's primarily a thriller author. So I was actually really curious to see this one get nominated in historical fiction. And I have heard people describe this one as more of a like literary thriller kind of a vibe. Like there is like a mystery happening in this book. So I thought this would be a good one to read for this video. And then the horror book that I decided to pick up is gonna be The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas. And this is one that I wanted to read because I feel like Isabel Cañas is an author that I have read in the past. I've enjoyed her books in the past, and I feel like time and time again, she's always nominated in the horror category. And this is just one that I haven't gotten around to. I actually think that horror is the category that I've read the most from in the entire Goodreads Choice Awards. Like I've really been reading a lot of horror this year because horror has definitely become my favorite genre. So I'm really excited to finally get to this one. And then the 3 thrillers that I decided to read during this video include King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. S.A. Cosby is an author that I've really enjoyed, and I think I've read almost every single thing he's come out with. I might have 1 or maybe 2 things from his backlist that I still haven't read, but I've really enjoyed S.A. Cosby's books in the past, and this is just one that's been sitting on my shelf for a while and I haven't had a chance to get to it yet, so we're gonna change that in today's video. I've been hearing really great things about King of Ashes, by the way. Like I've heard a lot of people say that this is their new favorite from S.A. Cosby, which is so exciting to hear. I also decided that yes, I'm gonna be reading a Frieda McFadden in this video. We're gonna be reading The Crash. This might be a terrible idea, you know, because last year I did not have the best experience when I was trying to read a Frieda McFadden video for a video like this one. But I read The Boyfriend from Frieda McFadden last year and I gave it 1 star. Like I was really not a fan of that, so hopefully this one is better. I think the only reason why I really wanted to include a Frieda McFadden in this video is because she has 3 books nominated in the thriller category. And I was asking in my video of like my Goodreads reaction video, like of the 3 books that are nominated, which one do you think I have the best shot at enjoying? And it seemed like the general consensus was either going to be The Crash or maybe The Intruder, but I decided to go with this one because my library had it and it just seemed like it would be a good fit. And so I don't know if this is the best idea I've ever had, but we're going to be reading the new Frieda McFadden in this video. And then the last thing that I'm going to be reading in this video is this one called Heartwood, and this one was also nominated in the thriller category, even though I've heard a lot of people describe this one as also being kind of like a literary thriller, and I've heard it described as more like literary fiction than thriller, but I am really excited to see books like this getting nominated in the thriller category. This is one that I definitely heard about earlier this year, but it wasn't really on my radar before. So yeah, those are the 5 books I'm going to be reading in today's video. I'm so excited now that it's like getting towards the end of the year and the Goodreads Choice Awards are out. I'm definitely planning on making a follow-up, like maybe a round 2 of a video like this. So if there's any other books that are nominated at the Goodreads Choice Awards that you really want to see me read, then let me know in the comments so I can consider them for round 2. But let's get right into the vlog. Hello, I wanted to update you because I drove down to the park this morning. It is a little bit cold to be reading outdoors today, but it's about like 52 degrees out here, so it's not too bad. The park was like really crowded earlier, and there was a lot of like children running around, and there was people playing badminton like right next to me. But luckily now it has cleared out, and it's only like 1:30 in the afternoon, but everybody's disappeared. But anyway, I wanted to update you because I've started reading What Kind of Paradise. I do have this one on my Kindle, and I've also been following along with the audiobook that I got checked out from my library. I didn't really know anything about this book other than that it's a historical historical fiction book, but it also has some like mystery thriller elements. But this one has been going so well so far, and it's so interesting. So in this story, we're following this young girl, Jane, who's a teenager, and we're kind of following her story as she's living in this really isolated cabin in Montana with her dad in the mid-90s. And I'm just loving the writing in this so far because this book is written as if this character is like reflecting on this time in her life. So it's like she's looking back on those years. You know, she kind of starts the book by talking about how her father was her entire world, and it had been that way ever since her mother died when she was 4 years old. It was basically like them against the world, so she never thought anything of it. It started to dawn on her that it was kind of weird growing up in such isolation. Like she just never got to experience things that other kids did. I feel like there was this one quote that I saw that kind of captures the overall theme of this book so far, because she said, "What happens after survival? What does it mean to survive when you're not quite sure what you're living for? What do you do when you start to realize that you want more than just existence?" I also really loved this one quote that was talking about like childhoods and like how much of our childhood do we actually remember. And it says, "How much of our childhoods can anyone actually remember anyway? And how much do we just piece together from the photographs in our family albums, the stories that our parents tell us about ourselves until we have enough detail to color them in our minds and claim them as our own? If you don't have any photographs or any family stories, you're left with nothing but wisps of fog." I think that's actually like such a good point, because I'm always impressed when people like really remember a lot of vivid details from their childhood. And I'm always like, is that the case for everyone? Because like I don't remember a lot of things from my childhood. It's all just kind of like blurry, to be honest, but I do know I remember things better when I see photos from my childhood or I hear stories from my family. But it's still like those stories were from their perspective as an adult, you know? So it's like, did you actually experience those things the way that you thought you did as a kid? I don't know. That's something I've always thought about. So I love that that thought was like vocalized here. I also just love books that take place in like the mid-90s. I feel like it's something that I've been like seeking out recently with fiction, because I love reading about books that take place in this era where like the internet was just becoming a new thing and like people were exploring the internet. They were finding out about like message boards and like chat rooms. I love this one quote about the internet when she said, "I couldn't explain the endorphin hit that I got from just surfing the web and witnessing the weirdness of human interest in all their forms. I couldn't explain how much I craved my newly minted connection with the outside world." I just love that so much, and it does make me feel nostalgic for that time period. I also think this book is just really heartbreaking in a lot of ways, you know, because like this story is about this girl starting to see her dad for who he truly is. And I think that's something that's a very like real and scary thing, you know, like when you're growing up, you know, because of course when you're growing up, like you're going to believe that your parent has your best interest at heart and that they're going to be looking out for you and never putting you in danger. But it's like, it's scary when you start to grow up and you realize that that might not be the case. I think that's a very scary and like very sad thing. There was this one quote that I loved when she kind of talked about this, when she said, "Never underestimate the power of love to lead you down the path toward willful blindness. Faith in the people you adore doesn't disappear slowly with each tiny disappointment. Instead, it collapses all at once, like the final snowfall that triggers an avalanche when the weight suddenly becomes too much to bear." Like that is stunning. That is a beautiful quote. You know, now that I'm about like 30% of the way into the book, I just hit page 111, and right now I'm starting to get to the really like intense scenes of the book where like the action feels like it's finally starting to pick up. I was reading the synopsis of this because I don't want to like accidentally spoil anything about the plot, but the synopsis does talk about how she begins to accompany her father on these occasional trips away from the cabin. It says, "When she realizes that her devotion to her father has made her an accomplice to a horrific crime, she flees Montana." So only at about 100 pages in, I'm just now starting to get to the point where she's like leaving the cabin for the first time. So it does feel like the story's about to really take off right now plot-wise. It was a little bit of a slow start for me to get into this one, but right now, about 100 pages in, I'm feeling so connected to these characters, and I just can't wait to see where the story goes. It's feeling very promising so far. Like I'm really enjoying this. It feels like it could be a 4 or 5 star. I'm just very impressed with the quality of the writing. Like I'm underlining so many different things. So that's amazing, but I think I'm going to continue to read here in the park for a little bit. It's not cold enough that I want to go back to my car yet, so I think I'm just going to sit here for a little bit more and read some of this. And then later tonight, I'm going to be going over to my sister's apartment because we're going to be doing the Troop Talk live show tonight, which is a monthly live show that I do on my Patreon where like me and my sister just hang out for like an hour and a half and we just yap and talk about all the things. So that's what I'm going to be up to. But until then, I'm just going to continue reading this one, and I hope that I love it.
Andrew Garfield, but he feels like the least fitting Peter Parker to me. He wasn't as sweet as the other two. Yeah, he's like a little bit more sassy. I can see that because like Peter Parker is supposed to be kind of like a dork, right? And I think Andrew Garfield's a little bit too like sassy and cute in a way. Yeah, like he's too hot. So I can definitely see that. Like I do agree that I think Toby plays Peter Parker better because he's more dorky, like he should be. I think because I think he's so hot and adorable and like so cute. I just love watching him as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. But I can see how maybe Toby's more true to the character, I guess.
I mean, when it comes to Spider-Man, he is the other guy.
Okay, hello. It is about 9:45 in the evening right now. I did end up going over to my sister's apartment and we did the troop talk this afternoon. I DoorDashed some yakisoba noodles and they were so good. And I ended up spending the rest of my night like laying in bed so that I could finish What Kind of Paradise because this was so good. Thank you so much to everybody who recommended me this book when I was reacting to the Goodreads Choice Awards nominations because this was incredible. I think I'm probably going to give this one like 4.5 out of 5 stars because I don't think it was the perfect 5-star book for me for a few reasons, mostly because I do think this book had a very slow start. And then there was also like a section of the book in the middle where I was starting to like lose interest just a little bit, or I was like wanting things to pick up. So I don't think this book had the perfect pacing for me, but like, God, what an incredible story. You know, right after I finished updating you and I was at the park, the part that I read in the book, like, holy crap, like things were definitely picking up in the storyline. And I could not believe what I was reading. Like things got very intense in the best way. So leading up to part 2 in the book was some really crazy shit for me. And that was like one of the most entertaining parts of the story. Like I stayed at the park a little bit longer than I was intending to because I could not pull my eyes away from what was happening in this. I also think there were just so many beautiful quotes. Like I underlined and annotated so many different things. Like there are a lot of really thoughtful ideas presented in this book that I wanted to come back to. I mean, of course, you know, with this one of the things that's talked about quite a bit is this idea of like childhood innocence. It says we sentimentalize childhood innocence for a reason. Kids have no reason to fear the world. They believe themselves immortal. They don't know how to be afraid of hungry bears. And don't all adults wish that they could feel this way too? It also talks about how the irony, of course, is that kids believe that knowledge unlocks happiness, but how it almost seems to be like the opposite, because it's almost like the more knowledge that you have and the more that you learn about the world, the less likely you are to be happy. And I've always thought that too, about how like there's no true happiness like the happiness of a child, because a child is just so happily, you know, naive, and like a child doesn't know about all of the horrors of the world. And so I really loved those conversations that were explored in this book. And God, the writing in this was just so beautiful. Like there were just so many beautiful quotable moments, but then also like I felt like I got really attached to these characters. I don't want to get into like spoilers or anything, but let's just say there was a little bit of a perspective shift in the second half of the book, and it really just added so much depth to the story for me, and it gave the story so many more layers than I was anticipating. I love that even though the plot of this book is not necessarily like the most unique thing that I've ever read, I think the writing itself and the characters really make up for that. There were a few moments in this book too that like really shocked me, like little plot twists that I didn't see coming, but I can definitely see why overall this book was put in the historical fiction category as opposed to the mystery thriller category, because I feel like this is one of those kind of mystery thriller books that it definitely has those elements, but like if you go into this thinking it's gonna be a mystery thriller, you might be disappointed because it definitely does lean more like literary, historical kind of a vibe. And because it's such a character-driven story, I do think it's better to categorize this as historical fiction, but I do think this was a very compelling, you know, like mystery thriller. Like there were some things happening that I was like, oh shit. There were some good twisty moments. So I really loved that about this too. And yeah, oh my God, I'm so excited that we're kicking off this video with a 4.5 star. Like I'm so glad that I love this one. I think first thing tomorrow morning, I want to go to the gym tomorrow because it's been a while since I've gone to the gym actually. And tomorrow it's supposed to be raining. So like I'm not going to be able to go walking outside. So I think first thing tomorrow, I want to go to the gym and I want to get started on The Possession of Alba Diaz because I just got the audiobook checked out from my library tonight. So the timing could not be more perfect. I'm going to get started on that one and I'll let you know my thoughts once I get into it. Hello, it is now the next day. This morning I did end up going to the gym. I also decided to wash my hair because I desperately needed it, and I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but like on my left eyelid, I think I'm having like an allergic reaction or something because my left eyelid is like really puffy for no reason. You know, I think maybe something happened last night when I was at the apartment because I noticed it during the troop talk last night. I was like, oh my God, like my left eye is bugging me. And then this morning when I woke up, it was still kind of puffy and I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I did want to let you know that I have started reading The Possession of Alba Diaz this morning, and I am now 132 pages in. I think I'm about like 30 to 40% of the way through the book at this point. This is one that I've been excited to read, but also a little bit nervous because I have read both other books that this author's published. This is her third book so far, and I have read both The Hacienda and Vampires of El Norte. And I think out of those two, I think my favorite has been The Hacienda so far because I think I gave Vampires of El Norte like maybe like a 2.5 or a 3 star. I don't think this author, Isabel Cañas, has ever written anything that I've given more than 3 stars. And this is one that I've been especially nervous to read because I feel like this one includes a lot of tropes, you know, like in horror books that I don't usually love. I mean, the fact that this book is very, you know, historical. This one takes place in 1765. So I don't always vibe with historical horror. So that was something that I was like, I don't know. And then also because this book involves, you know, a possession. To be honest, possession horror is like one of my least favorite horror tropes. Like I still do read it from time to time because like I'm open to giving things a shot and it's like you never really know. But just generally speaking, possession horror is like one of my least favorite horror tropes. So I was kind of nervous to read this. I was like, is this going to be my thing? And at the start of this book, I wasn't really sure. I mean, I really loved the opening chapter of this. I thought it was great because right at the start of this book, it almost sets it up like it's going to be this like creepy, almost like fairy tale type of story when it's like, I'd wager that you hadn't heard the legend of the mine. And especially if you're not around here, it's like a rumor. And they said, this one is not a clean tale, too simple. This one gets messy. And it says the truth is probably worse than the stories would have had you believe. I once heard it said that the words themselves are cursed, that the tale once told will evaporate like mercury. I can't know that for certain. Perhaps it will. So lean in, listen closely. I won't be repeating myself. Oh shit, what an interesting first chapter. I really liked that. Like almost setting it up as if like this story itself, like once you hear the story, you're gonna be cursed too. Like I really liked that opening chapter. It really set the vibes. And so what I'm liking about this story so far is that we're following this young woman named Alba, and she's currently engaged to this guy named Carlos, who is very wealthy. And from what I understand, there's like this plague that's happening. And so they're going to his family's mine in order to like seek shelter from the plague. And then we not only follow from Alba's perspective, but we also do get the perspective of this guy named Elias. And he just so happens to be, you know, Carlos's cousin. So he's kind of, you know, forbidden to her for obvious reasons because he's the cousin of the guy that she's gonna marry. I feel like that's something that Isabel Cañas does so well, is that she does write romance that's really compelling in her horror books. Like I feel like that's one of her strong suits. And so I am really liking the tension between Alba and Elias. They just have some really cute moments together already, and I'm loving the way that it's setting it up between these two. And so we do go back and forth between their point of views, and there have already been some really creepy moments, you know, because even though I'm not the biggest fan of possession stories, this one does have a few different things that are already like really freaking me out, because it says Alba begins suffering from strange hallucinations, sleepwalking, and violent convulsions. And like, dude, the whole thing with the sleepwalking, okay, that scares me quite a bit. I think one of the things in horror that has always freaked me out the most is like the idea of something happening to you while you're asleep, or the idea of like somebody watching you while you're asleep. And I think sleepwalking especially is just like so eerie and so creepy. You know, I actually used to sleepwalk a lot as a kid. Like it was an actual problem. We used to have to put like wet towels in front of my door so that I would wake up. And my parents were actually kind of worried at one point that I was gonna like sleepwalk down the stairs and like walk out of the house. Like that's how bad it got when I was a kid. I would always like wake up in a different room than I fell asleep in. And so the idea of sleepwalking, dude, it's so creepy. I can't even imagine if I had a kid walking around sleepwalking at night. Like I would be so scared. There's just something about it. I'm like, what do you mean you're unconscious but you're walking around like you're awake? It's just freaky. Like when you really think about sleepwalking, like that doesn't make any sense. So I'm loving those kind of eerie moments in this when like he's seeing her sleepwalking and he's like, what the fuck? And there's some like really weird shit happening with the sleepwalking. Like that's actually my worst nightmare. So I am really invested in that. I'm also feeling very invested in these two characters. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of like the historical type of writing style myself, I can still recognize that like this writing is absolutely gorgeous. Like it is so atmospheric. It's so vivid. It's so easy to like imagine the scenes. And so I am enjoying myself while I've been reading this. This feels like maybe it could be my new favorite from this author. So like that feels very promising. I actually do have plans with my sister sister later this afternoon. We're gonna go to the movie theaters to see, I think it's called Begonia. It's the new movie that has Emma Stone, and it's directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who's like one of my favorite directors. Probably gonna be pretty fucking weird. That's what I've heard. I've heard that it's weird. I feel like every movie by Yorgos is pretty weird, but he's also like one of my favorite directors because his movies are so weird. But anyway, I will check back in later once I've gotten further into this one. I did end up going to the movies with my sister tonight, and we watched the new movie Begonia, and this movie was so weird. Like, I know that Yorgos Lanthimos is pretty much known for having like really weird movies. My favorite movie from this director is The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and that movie is very weird. I also loved The Lobster. I loved Poor Things. Like, this director has a handful of movies that I've really enjoyed, but Begonia has got to be one of the weirdest movies that I've seen from him so far. The performances were incredible though. Like, I really think Emma Stone and Jesse Plemons, like both of them are probably going to get nominated for Oscars because they truly gave some of the best performances that I've seen this year. And like the premise for the movie is just so bizarre, you know, because it's about this guy, Jesse Plemons. His character, like, he believes that this woman who's like this very rich CEO of this company, played by Emma Stone, he thinks that she's an alien. And so the movie is about how him and his cousin are going to be abducting this woman, and they're trying to get her to take them to the alien ship. Strange movie. Like, oh my God, I was on the edge of my seat the entire time I was watching this. Like, I felt so uncomfortable. I think it was mostly a me thing because I do think the movie was really good. I thought the performances were so good. The cinematography was so good, but I just felt so uncomfortable while I was watching this movie, and I know that that's probably the intention, but I feel like this is one of those movies that, like, I've seen it once, I never want to see that again. But it also did have some really good commentary, even though I do think it was a little bit like heavy-handed at times. I don't know, I'm probably gonna give it like 3.5 stars. It's not my favorite from this director, but it is a very memorable movie, that's for sure. But anyway, I finished reading this book and I really enjoyed this. I feel like I'm really impressed by Isabel Cañas. Her writing is just so good in this book, and I felt really connected to the characters. And I think because I felt so connected to these characters, like, that's a huge part of the reason why I ended up loving this one as much as I did. I mean, I was a little bit bored at times with like the plot in this book because, you know, like I mentioned, this book deals with a possession, which is like not my favorite thing to read about in horror. And then it also deals a lot with, you know, religion because it's about a possession. I feel like any possession horror is usually pretty religious, and that's also something that I don't typically care for when I read horror. But I'm still glad that I read this one and that I gave it a shot anyway, because I do think there's something about Isabel's writing specifically that just really works. Like, it's just so beautifully written. But I think because I am who I am and I just don't really like stories about possessions, I don't think I'm gonna give this anything higher than like 3.5 stars. Maybe like 3.75 feels more right, you know, because I did like this one more than the Hacienda, and I do think this is my new favorite from Isabel Cañas, so like that's amazing. But it's still like not my perfect kind of horror book. But I will say, I thought the ending of this was absolutely incredible, like so good. It almost made me like a little bit misty-eyed. Like, it was just a beautiful ending. Like, I loved it. And then also like the romance in this book, oh my God, it was so cute. Like, this is exactly what I'm looking for when I want a horror book that has good romance in it. This has set the bar so high. I even tabbed a few moments where like the romance was exceptionally cute. I loved this one quote in particular. What a feeling it was to want, to crave, to bend towards someone's touch, so desperate for it that it was exquisite, that it felt akin to pain, to be bruised by a reverent mouth, to gasp when teeth found the soft fruit of lips and bit, to drink his moan as if it were the one oath binding her to this world, to scarcely breathe, for what was the work of breathing when mouths could do this? Like, it was just beautiful. It was gorgeously written. Like, I just loved that so much. There were just a few different quotes that I ended up tabbing and like annotating that I wanted to come back to. So I think that that's a great sign, and that's how you know a book is very well written. But yeah, this one was really good. I definitely understand the hype, and I do think if you're somebody who enjoys reading kind of like gothic, historical horror, especially horror that involves religion and also possession, I really think you would be into this. Like, I can definitely see why this one has been pretty hyped up this year, because I do think it's worthy of that hype. And so I'm really glad that this one went so well, and like this vlog is going so well. Wanted to update you because today I have started reading King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. I'm actually hosting my Screaming Color readathon right now on Patreon, and this is a readathon that's gonna last for the entire weekend. Today's Saturday, so it's day one, and I'm currently doing some 10-hour long reading sprints on my Patreon right now. I've been live for almost 4 hours at this point, but I've started reading King of Ashes. With this round of Screaming Color, the whole goal is to be reading books that either have orange or teal on the cover. This is my first time ever doing 2 colors for Screaming Color. It's actually my 9th time ever hosting this readathon, and I am surrounded by a bunch of different orange snacks. I actually just tried these white Reese's cups. Dude, the white chocolate ones are really good. I might actually like these even more than the regular ones, and also because white chocolate is a lot easier on my throat with my GERD, you know, than milk chocolate is, so these were amazing. I also do have, you know, these top favorites right here, the white cheddar Cheeto Puffs. These are my favorite thing ever, and they just so happen to be orange. My mom is so cute too because she did make a bunch of different like friendship bracelets last night that are orange and teal. This one says Taylor and this one says Ophelia, and then I have another one over here that says friendship. Like, she just made a bunch of these. Like, how cute. And my mom always does this thing every time I host one of these readathons where she gives me a little bag of like a bunch of different orange goodies, anything that's on color. So it's been a really fun morning so far. My sister even got to join me on sprints today because my sister just got a new computer that has a webcam, so that's been really cool to be able to have Rachel join for some of the sprints today. But anyway, I thought I would let you know that I'm now 150 pages into the new S.A. Cosby. I'm almost halfway through the book. I think I'm about 46% of the way through this one on audio, and this one has been going really well so far. I have read a lot of books from S.A. Cosby. This is actually the 4th book that I've read from him, and I think so far my favorite has got to be Razorblade Tears. That's like one of the only thriller books ever that has made me cry. I just really love the way that S.A. Cosby writes. Like, I always feel like I'm saying that he's like the Quentin Tarantino of like thriller books, just because his books can be very like violent and like very intense and involve a lot of like things with the body. But I feel like what S.A. Cosby does so well is he's able to write these characters who feel so real and so fleshed out, and I just feel instantly connected to them. And this one is the same because we're following this guy named Roman. And this guy Roman, he works in Atlanta, but he goes back to his hometown of Jefferson Run, Virginia, because he hears that his father was involved in a hit and run, and his father's currently in a coma in the hospital. And so this story is kind of about him and his siblings. He has this brother named Dante, and he has this younger sister named Nevia, and all of his family basically runs this crematory. And this story is kind of about how he's coming home to try to learn about what really happened to his father, but then he also discovers that his brother Dante, it says he's deeply in debt to dangerous, ruthless criminals. And so this is kind of one of those stories about how like Roman is gonna do whatever it takes to protect his family, which is definitely something, you know, that I can relate to as a sibling. I love stories like this that are kind of about protecting like not only your family, but like specifically when it comes to your siblings and like trying to make sure that they're okay. And I feel like, God, the writing in this book has been absolutely stunning so far. There was one quote towards the end of chapter 1 that I just thought was so beautiful when it says, "I used to be afraid the universe was evil. Now I almost wish it was, because evil can be bargained with. Evil has a purpose, no matter how horrible it may be. But what I've come to realize is the universe is indifferent, and that is much more terrifying." And then at the end of the chapter, when it says, "He saw them both fading away, turned to dust, and lost in the wind as the universe shrugged and continued on its way." Like, God, that is just so beautiful, so stunning. I also loved this one quote about memory when it said, "Memory is a powerful thing. It's a spirit we willingly call upon to whisper lies or help us punish ourselves." And then I also really loved this quote that was kind of talking about like living in poverty and how people will judge you for things that are out of your control. When it says, "Any hint that you have ever lived below the poverty line sent them scurrying like mice back to their elite ivory towers. They didn't trust one of the poors to handle their wealth. They looked at your clothes, they listened to how you talked, they looked at your teeth like you were a horse for sale." I just think the writing in this is so good, and there's already been so much good commentary throughout this book. I do feel really connected to Roman as a protagonist, and I'm really loving the story about him and his siblings and kind of like learning more about their family. We have had one chapter so far that was kind of like a flashback chapter back to 2003 when they were all kids, and you kind of get even more context for like their family and what their relationships look like. I feel like for me, at least plot-wise in this book, I guess I'm not the most invested in the plot of like what's going on, and I feel like that tends to be the case a lot for me with the S.A. Cosby books, because I feel like his thriller books tend to lean a little bit more like crime thrillers, which are just not my favorite kind of thrillers, to be honest. Like, I definitely lean more towards the other types of thrillers these days, but I still do come back to his books time and time again because I do love the way that he writes his books, and I feel like it's so impressive how immediately drawn into these characters I feel, and his story writing is so good. The audiobook is also incredible, by the way. Like, listen to this guy's voice. This is just a sample of what the audiobook narrator sounds like.
Tranquil's rage was not more powerful than Torrance avarice. I know a good business opportunity when I see one. If we can't talk here, we should talk soon.
Like, his voice is just so nice. Like, I could listen to this guy narrate anything. Like, he could talk for hours about anything and I'd listen to it. So the audiobook is going very well. I could definitely see why this one was also nominated for audiobook at the Goodreads Choice Awards. I mean, not that it's doing anything like totally exceptional, but it is a really good audiobook. Like, I'm really enjoying my time listening to this today. So anyway, I've been live already for almost 4 hours today and I have 6 hours to go. So I'm definitely going to try to finish up this one tonight. I'm also going to be making some HelloFresh burgers for dinner later that I'm so excited about because HelloFresh, like, they seriously make some of my favorite burgers. Hello, checking in because it has been a few days since the end of my Screaming Color readathon. I have finished reading King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby, and this book was such a great surprise because throughout most of the book, while I was reading it, I was feeling like it was probably going to be like around a 3-star for me. I mean, I was really enjoying this book because I really like S.A. Cosby's writing, and I feel like he's really good at fleshing out his characters, and I felt really connected to Roman as a protagonist, but I guess I just wasn't that invested in the plot. I feel like a lot of this book is about what's going on with his brother, because his brother's dealing with a lot of these really dangerous guys. He's like owing them money. You know, I'm just not that invested in that kind of a storyline, but I was really invested in kind of like the mystery about their mother and like what ended up happening to their mother. Like, that was definitely the aspect of the book that pulled me in the most. There were some parts of this book that I thought were kind of slow and kind of boring towards the middle of the book, but then the ending was so strong. I thought the last like 50-ish pages of this book were so good, and there were so many shocking reveals that had my jaw on the ground. I was like, no way. And I just felt so connected to like the family and like what was happening to their family. It was just very intense. I feel like as far as S.A. Cosby books go, I do think this is like one of his better books. I mean, I still think Razorblade Tears is like my favorite from this author because that was the only book of his that I gave 5 stars, and like I got emotional during that book. But I could definitely see people saying that this one gets emotional at the end as well because this ending was just so wild. I think for me, this one's probably going to be around like a 4-star book, which is great, you know, because I thought for the entire time that I was reading this that it was going to be more of a 3-star. So the ending really improved this book for me and bumped it up to a 4-star, and I'm so glad about it. I feel like S.A. Cosby is just such a talented writer, you know, because he's so good at writing action and suspense and like keeping you on the edge of your seat. But then I think he's also, you know, really good at writing like family dynamics, especially the more complicated, you know, family dynamics. Like, I really loved the exploration of like this brotherhood, you know, between Roman and Dante. And I definitely related to that feeling of like, I'll do anything that I can to protect my sibling and like look after my sibling and keep them safe. And so I definitely felt a lot for Roman throughout this book because I feel like his limits are really pushed in this. I also just loved following like their family business with like the crematory, because I don't think I've ever read a book about a family who owns a crematory, like where they can cremate people. Like, I feel like that's a really interesting and unique perspective to get in this. So yeah, there was a lot that I really liked about this, and I love that it's called King of Ashes too. Like, it just feels so fitting for this character. But anyway, I just pulled up at my library. It's a really rainy and like gloomy afternoon. I've been doing a lot of cleaning this morning because I've been cleaning my room and my bathroom and like washing some of my blankets and just kind of having like a cozy morning. And I've been listening to this one on audio, Beg, Borrow, or Steal. I'm almost done with this book. I've just been listening to this one on audio for like the past week now. Just like whenever I have free time, I just pop in this audiobook, and it is going very well. I think I'm like 80% of the way through this, and this one also feels like it could be a 4-star for me. I'm really liking this. I've actually never read anything by Sarah Adams before. I did realize that this is like the 3rd book in a romance series, I think, but like I think it's fine that I haven't read the first 2 books. But I really do like these 2 characters a lot, and I feel like the reason why I'm liking this one so much is because I didn't realize that both of these characters would be writers. I mean, I knew that they were both elementary school teachers, which I also do really like and I think is really cute, but I didn't know they would also both be writers. And this book does have a lot of discussion about them, you know, writing and like writing their stories and like talking about that with each other. So I do really like that element of this one as well. So I'm probably going to finish up this book soon. right, hello, it is me again. It's a little bit later in the night. I just got home. I spent the entire afternoon sitting in that library parking lot reading The Crash by Frieda McFadden because this is the next one that I was thinking about reading, and I brought it with me in my backpack to the library, so I decided to just sit there and read it. And I don't even feel like I was sitting in the library for that long reading this book, but somehow 260 pages have gone by, and I have like less than 100 pages of the book left at this point, so I thought I would update you. This book, The Crash, is one that I've been, a little bit nervous to read because it's Frieda McFadden. I don't have the best history with Frieda McFadden. In this story, we're following this main girl named Tegan, and she is 8 months pregnant. And something that I do like about this book is that it's taking place in the state of Maine, and it's taking place in the month of December when there's like this crazy snowstorm that's happening. And so this book is kind of all revolving around this like car crash that like changes her life, because this girl Tegan is like going through some like really shitty things at the start of this book. Because, at the start of this book, not only is she like, 8 months pregnant, but she kind of talks about how like she doesn't really remember the night that she got pregnant very well. And there's this guy that she doesn't know, and he's the one who's the father. And he basically says that he's going to be like offering her a lot of money to keep it hush hush about this baby because he doesn't want the word to get out. And so right at the start of this book, it's kind of like a panicked, situation for her because she doesn't want anything to do with this guy, and she's going to be going to like visit her brother. And so she decides to go on the road, even though it's snowing so badly, which like, girl, what are we doing? Like, you're 8 months pregnant, you're going out on the road where there's this like crazy blizzard happening. I mean, I know that her circumstances are not great, but like, girl, there are better decisions to be had, And I feel like that's always my biggest complaint with a Frieda McFadden book is I'm like, why are her protagonists always just so dumb? Like, why are they always making the dumbest decisions to put themselves in the most dangerous situation possible? I don't know. But anyway, this girl, Tegan, she gets into this car accident, and then there's this man who like walks up to her car and he's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, no, oh my God, I feel like I broke my ankle. Like, I'm stranded out here. And he notices that she's pregnant. And so he's like, oh shit. So he gets her out of the car, brings her into his truck, and he's like driving her. And she's like, are you going to take me to the hospital? And he's like, no, I'm going to take you back to my house. And she's like, bitch, what the fuck? Like, no, you're taking me to the hospital. And he's like, this truck can't even get that far. He says the blizzard is just so bad, and all the streets are closed, and it's too dangerous to try to drive all the way to the hospital. So he brings her back to his cabin where him and his wife both live there. And it says, but something isn't right. Staying here may have been her most deadly mistake yet. Like, yeah, no kidding. Honestly, this book is kind of reading as if it's Misery by Stephen King, but like a ripoff version, like a not as good version. When I first picked up this book, I didn't realize how long it would be. Like, why is this 375 pages? But like, there is just no reason for this book to be so long. And I feel like as I'm reading it, I feel like Frieda McFadden is just so wordy, and she just has a bunch of word salad. It's like a lot of the words on the page just don't mean anything, and I feel like this is the kind of book that you can get through so quickly because so much of the chapter is just like meaningless words on a page until you get to the very end of the chapter and there's like a little bit of a twist, or like it's usually only like the last 2 sentences of the chapter that like moves the story forward and like actually gives you some plot and some context. But I feel like this is a book that's so easy to fly through because there's nothing happening. And naturally, because we're following this girl who's going to be staying at this cabin with these 2 people, I feel like so many of the chapters are just like very repetitive because you're just seeing a lot of like what's going on in her head with being like, am I in danger? Where's my pepper spray? What's going on? And then also you not only get our main girl Tegan's perspective, but you do get an additional perspective in this book. But I feel like that almost makes it more repetitive in a way because then you're just reading about the same scenes that you just read, but you're reading about it from a different perspective. But it's not really adding anything to the story for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love thrillers when you have like a multiple point of view situation, and I feel like sometimes it can make the story have so much more depth and like it can make the story feel a lot more fast-paced. But in this particular situation, it just feels like it's adding to the page count. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need all this extra perspective, and like I don't need to be rereading scenes that I've already read. So at this point, I don't have high hopes that I'm gonna end up enjoying this one. I mean, I am curious to see where the rest of this goes because right now I feel like it's very like obvious what it's doing, and like the setup feels very obvious. It feels like I've read a lot of thrillers just like this one, but like, is this the worst Frieda McFadden I've ever read? Definitely not. I like the setting in this. Like, I like that it's taking place in Maine. I like that it's like a snowy atmosphere, but otherwise, like, I don't know if I have too much positive positive things to say about this. I guess we'll have to see what happens in these last like 100-ish pages. I might actually just try to finish this one later tonight since I don't have too much of it left. Okay, hi, hello. It is the next morning, but I wanted to update you because last night I did finish The Crash by Frieda McFadden, and the ending of this was not very good. You know, I thought there would be something at the end that I was like shocked by or surprised by, but no, that was not the case with this one. You know, I think I'm probably gonna end up giving this book 2 stars instead of 1 star because I don't think this book did anything to like actively piss me off the way that some of other Frieda's books have in the past, but I still think this was so mid. And I think this book was very predictable and not surprising at all. I just still don't understand, you know, like Frieda's popularity because I'm like, is the bar really that low for thrillers? That like this is what's one of the most popular thrillers of the year? I just feel like this is a book that feels like a rinse and repeat of so many books that I've read in the past because this one just has such a similar premise to so many other thrillers that I've read before, and Frieda's writing is just like not that good. It's very simplistic, it's very basic, but like it just has no depth to it. And I get that maybe that's the point, like not every book needs to have a lot of depth, and I get that maybe her books are just like easy to binge and get through, and I think that's great, but I just wanted a little bit more out of this, especially because this book reminded me so much of Misery by Stephen King. I mean, as Gen Z would say, this was basically Frieda McFadden just reheating Stephen King's nachos. It has like a similar setup to Misery, but this book was not nearly as interesting or not nearly as compelling. I feel like sometimes in a Frieda McFadden book, she can have a plot twist at the end of the book that feels so ridiculous and like so nonsensical that like it doesn't even make any sense, or it can go this route where the ending is just so predictable and so obvious that there's nothing surprising about it at all. And honestly, like I don't know which one I'd prefer, because in one scenario it's like, well, at least I was surprised even though it's ridiculous, but then in this scenario it's almost like even more like it just fizzles out into nothing and like there's nothing shocking about the ending. So like I don't know which scenario is worse. I just don't think that Frieda McFadden is like that great of a writer. I just really don't see the hype with her books. So I'm gonna give this 2 stars, even though that feels a little bit generous for how much I didn't really care for this one. But I just pulled up at one of my local coffee shops because I think I want to do some reading in a coffee shop this afternoon, but I'm not entirely sure which book I want to pick up next at this point. So I think I'm going to read the first chapter of a few things.
Yeah, I'm speeding 91, drunk driving, losing all intention, falling. Once I was living for the passion, now it's all missing without you. Yeah, I'm speeding 91, drunk driving, losing all intention, falling. Once I was living for the passion, now it's all missing without you.
새벽 2시 밤늦게까지 telling me that you Gucci 너답지 않지 got me driving like a movie 난 아직 굳이 걱정 따윈 없지 pedal to the floor only seconds left to go 새벽 4시 오후 아침까지 미안한다고 말하지 나답지 않지 got me calling like a movie 난 아직 굳이 걱정 따윈 없지 pedal to the floor only seconds left to go.
Okay, hi, hello. It is now the next day. I have a few things to update you on because yesterday I was gonna go into this little coffee shop, but then when I walked in, there was like no seating available in the coffee shop, so I decided to go to my local mochi nut instead, and I was able to get one of my like boba tea coffee lattes that I really like to get there, and I got a couple donuts to bring to my sister's apartment last night because my sister wasn't feeling that well last night, so I was gonna come over. And while I was at the mochi nut, I started reading The Once and Future Me, and I got about 20 pages into this one before I decided to just put it on pause for now. I am liking it, but it just wasn't exactly what I was in the mood for. And so instead, I decided to start reading Heartwood, which I did have on my Kindle yesterday because I was able to check it out from my library on my Kindle. And I literally started reading like the first 6% of this book. I think I only got like 30 pages in where I was like, okay, no, I need to actually like go to my local bookstore and pick up a copy of this book immediately so that I could start annotating in this. And I downloaded the audiobook from Libro this morning. And today I'm over at my sister's apartment because I'm watching Mavis for Rachel and Obed today, so I'll be here all afternoon. But I just had this gut feeling yesterday when I started this book, like this was gonna be a new all-time favorite for me and like an easy 5 stars. Like there is so much about this book that I'm already loving. So I just decided immediately to like go to my bookstore so that I can own a copy of this book. And I'm so glad that I did because now I'm about 126 pages in and I am loving this so much. I feel like this is exactly the kind of like literary thriller that I look for. And so far this has a lot of things that I really love about it. So something that I love is that this one is actually taking place in Maine, in the woods. And you know, isn't that so crazy? Because I think the Frieda McFadden book that I just read, didn't that one also take place in Maine? How weird. But in this book, we're following the story of this 42-year-old woman named Valerie who's recently gone missing on the Appalachian Trail. But what I like about this book is that we are getting multiple different perspectives. So one of the main perspectives in this book that we're getting is from this woman named Beverly, and she's actually one of like the detectives that's going to be working this case. I don't know if she's the detective exactly because it says that she's the state game warden. So I don't know if that exactly means detective, but she's like working with the police. And then we also do follow this character Valerie as she's writing letters to her mother. So like in between the chapters from Beverly, we will get these letters that Valerie is writing while she's on the trail. And I am just like loving the letters. Oh my God, like the letters are one of my favorite parts of this book. But then we also follow from the perspective of this woman named Lena, and it says that she's a 76-year-old bird watcher who's living in Connecticut in a retirement community. And I'm also loving her perspective as well. I feel like I've been talking about this a lot recently, how like I'm really loving books that have like an older protagonist or where you read from the perspective of somebody who's a little bit older, because I feel like the way that they talk about life and like their experiences is just really touching and like really beautiful and something I've really been enjoying a lot in my books recently. But I just had a feeling I was gonna love this book when I read the opening chapter, because it starts with one of Valerie's letters, you know, to her mother. And she says when she was a little girl, she said, "I would press my hand against your chest so I could feel the center of you, your heartwood, your innermost substance, like the core of a tree that keeps it standing." Like, wow, that's beautiful. And then at the end of her first letter, she says, "I didn't want to grow up. Naturally, I had no choice and I grew up anyway. Eventually, I understood that motherhood, as the child imagines, is unperformable. No woman is a star, no woman is a god or a tree or a magician. But for a while, in your arms, the universe was the right size and I knew where I was." Oh my God, that is the most stunning thing I've ever heard in my life. And see, part of the reason why I like getting the perspective of this elderly woman as well is when she says, "Being alone was being intact. She cannot bear the suggestion that her mind is unsafe, a wild place where she wanders, a subject." I just love that writing there. Something I also love about this is that this character Valerie, she's actually a nurse in her day-to-day life, and so she does talk quite a bit about her experiences with being a nurse. And they do talk a lot about like the COVID pandemic in this book as well, and like how difficult it was for her to be a nurse during this time. There was this one quote that she said about being a nurse that like really hit me when she said, "We understood helping people to die with dignity as an honor. Then how does the nurse understand her work when she herself is wrapped in plastic, mouth behind a mask, eyes behind a visor, as the dying person's eyes search for their loved ones in an absolute vacuum of dignity?" Like, God damn, that is just so rough. I think part of why this book is working so much for me is because I've come to discover that I actually love books that are about a character and their journey while they're hiking, because there's something about the way that like the woods are described in this book. It's just so atmospheric. The way that she describes the woods when she says, "These aren't your normal woods with gentle slopes full of filtered sunlight and big hardwoods that create a tiny understory. These are crowded, witchy, moss-dark woods where root to crown the trees battle for light, everything reaching, even the tiny seedlings sprouting in the leaf hummus. These woods are a chaos of rock, dirt, brush, and root. They have a close, almost bloody smell. Searchers don't walk so much as crawl, disentangle, and bushwhack." Like, that is stunning. And I also love the discussion about like why people would even want to go on a hike like this in the first place, and like why hikers endure so much pain. When it says, "Listen, no one hikes 2,000 miles because they're happy. Even the most cheerful or uncomplaining hikers aren't happy. Everyone's got a reason to hike the trail." And she says, "What was mine? I suppose it was to heal." And I feel like in a lot of ways, this book is actually reminding me a lot of Wild, which is like one of my favorite nonfiction books of all time, because this is also about a woman who's going on this very extreme hike. And obviously like Wild is a nonfiction book and it actually takes place on the Pacific Crest Trail, whereas this one is obviously like a fictional book about a woman who goes missing on the Appalachian Trail. So this one's more like in Maine, you know, on the East Coast, but like the vibes of these two books have been very similar for me so far. And so I'm really liking Heartwood actually, because I like that there's this kind of mystery about like what happened to this woman Valerie. Like, did she actually go missing on the trails, or like did she intentionally leave? Is she trying to run away from her life, or like what exactly is going on? I like that we're getting the mystery, and I feel like I'm getting to a point in the book where I'm about to find out more information about what might have happened to her. But I do like that we're switching between the three perspectives, and I love that it does feel very literary, and like the writing is just so good and so beautiful. So this feels like it could be a new all-time favorite. Like, this feels like it could be one of my favorite books that I've read this year, and that's an amazing feeling to have. Okay, hello, hi. It has been a few hours and Mavis is currently sleeping behind me on the couch. I don't know if you can hear her snoring because I am using my microphone, so like I don't know if it's gonna be able to pick up on her snores or not, but if you can hear them, I apologize. She's been playing like so hard for the last like 2 hours and then she just completely crashed. But in the meantime, I've been listening to Heartwood on audio all afternoon and I just finished reading it. And this is without a doubt a 5-star book, which feels so good. Like I almost knew from the first chapter that this was going to be a 5-star book for me. So I'm so glad that that feeling was right. And I just really loved this one so much. I feel like the writing was just so freaking beautiful. And I'm really glad that I ended up buying this book yesterday because there are so many passages that I ended up underlining and I wrote so much throughout the book. And you know, even though this is a story about like a woman going missing in the woods and like part of the story is this mystery of like trying to figure out what happened to her, I think that aspect of the book was actually like my least favorite part of the book, or at least like I never felt that compelled by the mystery in this necessarily, but it was more so just like the beautiful writing, the characters, like there were so many thought-provoking things getting brought up, and I feel like this one has a lot of themes about like motherhood and about like growing up. On the description of this book it says, Heartwood inspires larger questions about the many ways in which we become lost and how we are found. And I feel like that's the general vibe of the story, and that's why it feels a lot more literary to me as opposed to like mystery thriller vibe. But like, God, there were so many quotes like this one. It says, I've heard it said that the sorrow of human life is that it ends, but I don't think that's the source of our sorrow. Everything ends, not just human lives. Days end, species disappear, planets die. No, the real sorrow of human life is that we feel. That's our affliction. And then at the end of that chapter it says, then why was I given this heart? It is so much more than I need. I mean, I should not be that surprised that a book that's called Heartwood just packed so much heart. Like this is definitely one of those stories that's more, you know, about the characters and about their feelings and about navigating what's going on in their lives than it is about the plot itself. And I just really, really love books like this. I feel like the writing in this reminded me of a lot of other books that I love. I mean, obviously Wild is one that comes to mind just because of the way that this book talks about like nature and the wilderness and the woods, but it also kind of reminded me of like the love that I have for some other literary thrillers, like Long Bright River is one that comes to mind. And you know, the fact that this one was also a Read with Jenna book club pick, like dude, maybe I do need to read her book club picks next year, because last year, if you recall, my #1 favorite book that I read last year, Blue Sisters, was also a Read with Jenna book club pick last year. And I feel like the Read with Jenna book club, like she always has so many books that she chooses for the book club that I'm so interested in reading. So I'm like, maybe next year I should actually commit to try to read all of her book club picks in the year of 2026, because I've always been very impressed by a lot of her book club selections. And honestly, like before the Goodreads Choice Awards nominations were announced, I don't even think I'd really heard of this book. Like I'd definitely seen the cover around it like Barnes & Noble, but like I never thought like, oh, this is gonna be something that I'm gonna pick up and love. So I'm just so thrilled that I love this, and I'm so glad to be ending this video on like such a positive note. Yesterday while I was at the bookstore, I not only picked up this book, but I also ended up buying a copy of The Names, which is another book that got nominated at the Goodreads Choice Awards that I want to read really soon. And that one was also a Read with Jenna book club pick recently, so I felt even better about buying it because I just have this gut feeling that I'm gonna love this one. And so very soon here in the month of December, I'm gonna be making another vlog kind of like this one where I read even more Goodreads Choice nominations, and I think that one is definitely gonna be included. And I have a number of other books that I would really like to get to because there's just been so many good books nominated this year. I would also really like to read Death of the Author and Cursed Daughters and the new Karen Slaughter, We Are All Guilty Here. There's a number of different books that I'm hoping to read in another video, but do let me know if there are any specific Goodreads Choice nominees that you would like to see me read. At the time that I'm filming this, I don't know what the top 10 at the Goodreads Choice Awards are, but I know you probably already know by the time this video goes up. So if there's anything in particular at the Goodreads Choice Awards that you would really like to see me read, then definitely let me know, because I'm open to reading whatever you think I'm gonna enjoy. Because I don't know if I ever would have picked Heartwood for myself, and the fact that I just read this and loved this, like, oh my gosh, it has me feeling so optimistic about what other books could be out there that I would have never picked up on my own that I could enjoy. And I feel like for the most part, this reading vlog went so well, like even better than I could have ever predicted. So I had a really great time with this vlog. I hope you had a really great time watching. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you've read any of these books, I would love to know your thoughts on them. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, you could even put a little like heart emoji in the comments for me, because any kind of engagement on my videos like helps my channel so much, and I really appreciate you watching. And thank you so much for watching and hanging out all the way to the end of this video. Mavis says goodbye as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye.